Hey everybody, so we bargained with the hospital again today and they brought another economic proposal to us at bargaining today, which includes 3.5% increase total over the life of the contract, which when you take into account inflation is totally unacceptable. We did reach a tentative agreement on technology. Basically, we're trying to get out in front of that so that HCA will not try and replace real nurses with virtual nurses or AI or something like that. Our position is that AI is fine, it can augment our practice, but it can't replace it. There's a lot of questions about striking, and HCA, they're not moving at all on PRN pay. They're really not moving on pay in a satisfactory way, and we do need to prepare for a strike. We're going to try and answer some of your questions about striking today because I know there's a lot of questions about that. Probably in the second week of July, we're going to have some strike schools. What are strike schools? There'll be Zoom meetings available for all bargaining unit nurses where we'll answer all your questions. One question that gets asked a lot is, will you get attendance points for strike day? No. Striking is legal, and if we do a strike, we will not accrue any attendance points. You also can't use PTO for that day. So we are planning on doing a one-day strike if we do a strike, and it would probably be during the week. NNU has never done a strike on the weekend. It's a very heavy lift for the hospital to bring in over 1,000 nurses to cover the nurses that are on strike. It's extremely expensive, even for one day. So who decides if a strike will happen? The nurses will. The nurses will vote on a strike. All nurses will be notified of the date, time, and location of the strike and will be encouraged to vote. If the nurses vote in favor of going on strike, the hospital will receive notification, a 10-day notification, that a strike has been authorized. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go on strike, but the nurses get to authorize the strike. Is there a date for a strike or a strike vote? No. Right now, nurse representatives and members of the facility bargaining council are circulating strike pledges. Please reach out to your facility bargaining council member or nurse rep and sign your strike pledge. In other hospitals where a majority of nurses sign these strike pledges, it's a very powerful escalation on our part that makes HCA take pause, or at least take us seriously, because they know a strike is possible. If you go on strike, can you be fired? No. Going on strike is a protected activity. It's protected by federal law. We have the right to strike. Will the hospital fire me for attendance points if I go on strike? No. Strikes are protected activity, and no nurse can be retaliated against for going on strike. Nurses are not required to call out either on strike day. How can I afford to miss a strike if I have bills to pay? If nurses vote in favor of going on strike, the strike will be for one day. It's encouraged that all nurses work an extra shift now and set the money aside to pay bills. So with the increase in housing costs and the increase in food costs, the increase in vehicle costs, total inflation costs, we can't afford not to miss a day and go on strike. We're literally talking about a financial gain to make life sustainable in Western North Carolina, or taking a financial loss. If we don't sign strike pledges, or at least threaten to go on strike, the hospital doesn't have to give us anything. The staffing will say the same, which is ridiculous staffing. The wages will be stagnant. That's what we're looking at if we don't at least threaten a strike. I heard the strike is going to cause me to lose a week's worth of pay. No, any potential strike would only be for one day. The hospital administration typically uses lockouts as an intimidation tactic and circulates rumors that a lockout will occur of various lengths. In addition, HCA would sacrifice a significant amount of revenue if they locked the nurses out of the hospital. They'd have to cancel their elective procedures and stuff like that. If I go on strike, will I lose my health insurance? No, you will not use your health insurance. I've been getting a lot of confusing and contradictory text messages about potential strikes. Some of the messages are mean and rude. There have been a lot of misinformation circulating from anonymous sources. We are currently bargaining with 17 total hospitals with HCA, and these same nebulous, malicious texts and messages are going out to nurses at other facilities also. We don't know where they're coming from. Our social media has been attacked, and we're not exactly sure of the source of it. So another one of the questions that we get a lot is, are we striking over money, or would we strike over money? But we're striking over the working conditions that cause 10 immediate jeopardies, the terrible working conditions, the terrible nurse-to-patient ratios. We'd be striking over the terrible working conditions that jeopardize patients' health every day. We'd be striking for our patients, our community, our families. Otherwise, we'll have the same deplorable working conditions we have now. Yes, money is important. Yes, we need to retain nurses. That's a big factor in it, but we can't not afford to strike for our communities.
Right.
So as far as the continuation of services, that's why there's a federal law that nurses have to give a 10-day notice prior to a strike. We know that the hospital has been advertising for strike nurses for several months now. It's the hospital's obligation to cover all the existing services that they currently have in place now. So they would need to bring in nurses from every specialty. So we don't have a date for a strike yet. We are escalating our pressure on the hospital. That's why we're asking for strike pledges. Without a majority of strike pledges, we have to take what they give us, which isn't very much. It's a cut and pay when inflation is taken into account. So by escalating our pressure with strike pledges, the hospital will take us more seriously. My personal thought is, what HCA is doing is very calculated, and they're not going to budge until they see that we are at least capable of a strike, because then they will have to move to avert financial costs associated with the strike. We think that you should also know that because we are negotiating 17 different contracts with various HCA hospitals in various states, to include North Carolina, Florida, Nevada, Kansas, Missouri, Texas, that there's a potential for multi-hospital strikes. I would say that is likely. So we won't be going on strike alone. That would be tremendous leverage that we can exert on HCA. And I can tell you that we are in concert with the other hospitals with all our activities.